Thank you for all your interest. Basically, what we did was we had a year ago, we issued a sort of drone machine, and we had a year of feedback, do this, do that, why this and why that. And we have decided to work on a second improved drone machine with attachments. So I'm not going to make any performances, so excuse the noise that you will hear, but I am only here to demonstrate the technical side of it, to see what it does. How you go around using its facilities, it's up to the artistic people amongst you to go ahead. We have initially decided to bring it out again as a separate unit, which I have in front of me here. However, we are aware that there is a good number, and it's increasing, on the island of eurorack users. So quite early in the design of the second unit, we have decided to go to make it eurorack compatible, which have added some features to it, which we will discuss at the appropriate time. So, Terramaxka. Terramaxka is Maltese from Italian of a barrel organ. A barrel organ, basically, you feed it something, which could be anything. In the case of the Terramaxkas, they would have been a musical score on card or on wood punched. And when you turn the handle, it makes music or whatever. This particular one has something similar to that, a digital analog to loading it up manually, and then you let it cycle through the same thing all over, which is why we named it Terramaxka. Okay. Basically, we have a single, okay. This stakes have been designed to use one of these. These are quite prolific. Nowadays, anybody who has a mobile phone has one of them. So what you do is you just plug it in, switch on, and we start hearing the melody of a single sound. I would like to point out that I am not using the audio through the system so that we can be as close as possible to the actual experience. This will be moved at a later date. Okay, here we have a single oscillator. Wow, okay. And it starts getting boring after a few seconds. Okay, what to do? We can change its tone. Wow, let's look at that, okay? And you can go up into supersonics so that maybe we can sell a few to the bats which fly around at our place too. There you go. Okay. Now, since also this gets boring, okay, there is also a feature that this is the fundamental frequency of the oscillator. We also decided to improve in it by adding a sub-octave to it, and another division to get a sub-octave. Basically, what is happening here is that we are getting the fundamental frequency, dividing it by 2 to get a sub-octave, and dividing that further by 2 to get a sub-octave. So you can blend into them. Here what I am doing basically is using a 3-stage mixer to blend between each other the 3 separate frequencies. That's settled for here. Right. In addition to the constant tone, we have added also a stutter feature. The stutter feature, as it suggests, is it switches on and off the tone at a settable rate to give it some motion, even if it is just a single tone. So let's kick the stutter in. That is the slowest stutter rate. Then we start increasing put up the frequency up a bit. And we go into chiptune territory. For those who would like to push further the envelope, we have decided to increase further its range, and it can scream all at once. Okay, just to leave it just a little bit to go. Let's go back to a pure tone. Okay, and we have some audio movement on the single oscillator. Now, at the moment I was just playing manually with the controls, and the changes in frequency that you have heard was being made through my hands manually by varying the frequency knobs. Now, this unit, we have added a sequencer, an 8-step sequencer, which could change the frequency by itself so that you can have a tune. The way it does is that rather than just have a single tuning knob to change the frequency, we have 8 different tuners. This is one of them, which we can access one by one on a sequence. And we get this. What is happening here is that, as we can see by the light, there is a clock bit generator, which is generating a 3-bit code, which is being decoded into 8 steps, and each step has a potentiometer connected to it, which we can set individually to give us the tunes which you are hearing now. This has been set at a slow rate so that one can appreciate the difference between each other. But we can kick it up a bit, quite a lot actually. And again, if we push the envelope, you get a drone of a drone. We can kick stutter in. Can somebody please answer that phone which seems to be ringing somewhere? Okay. This is what I would call a linear progression of the channels. We have 8 channels. We start from 1 and we go to 8. The oscillator, the clock bit generator, has the possibility that it can be run in random mode. Random mode, rather than programming the generator to output a constant adding of the number, we can turn that into something a little bit chaotic by actually bringing in 3 separate generators generating a single bit to make up the decoding word for the 3 to 8 demultiplexer so that it can go absolutely nuts. And we get this. Basically, what is happening here that the sequencer is running in a random mode. However, the random mode is on repeat. Once again, taking into consideration the moniker of the Terramaxka random on repeat. Okay, that is one mode by which this unit can be run. The second mode into which it can be driven is called the wavetable oscillator mode. And please bear with me because I am going to give you a whole course on wavetable oscillators on a single page in a couple of minutes. Basically, a wavetable oscillator is a digital entity. It involves a processor, a central processor, which basically what it does is it accesses a library of values on certain memory locations, and it uses the values which are found there to generate its output wave. What the wavetable oscillator does is if we take a unit which has only 8 memory locations with 8 memory values in each location, it reads 4 zeros and 4 ones. It passes this digital information through a DAC, and it outputs the relevant waveform, which can be processed as being an audible signal rather than a digital one. 4 zeros and 4 ones would give us a simple square wave, which has this frequency and this characteristic shape. If, on the other hand, we go down to another place in the same library, we have the figure from 1 to 7, incrementing all the way into 8 steps. When the duck outputs it, we see that we get a stepped waveform which resembles a ramp. It is not a straight line, but because this is a digital thing, and unless we apply anti-aliasing and other processing, it would remain a stepped one. However, as you can see, it is a very good facsimile of a ramp. In order for this to happen, the processor within the digital oscillator would have to step from the first memory location to the 8th memory location to generate a single wave. So actually, we need 8 clock samples to get 1 cycle of audible frequency. Now, basically, that is how a digital wavetable oscillator works. And here we have replicated the digital processing to obtain a wave by wavetable by using the 8-step sequencer. If we look here, we would find that if we set the 8 frequency potentiometers on each channel to the same values that we had in the memory, the example I used before to demonstrate how the wavetable oscillator works, in memory location A, we would have the 4 at the beginning would be set at 0 volts, and the remaining 4 set at maximum. This would give a wave which is similar to the square wave we generated with memory data located in memory location A. Consequently, if we do the same thing with the values in memory location B here, and as you can see, 0, 1, 2, this is increasing, 3, 4, we are always increasing the level of voltage to get the wave similar to this. So basically, this is a crude analog representation of what happens into an actual wavetable oscillator. And we get this kind of result. Let's move this away. We change its mode from audio oscillator to CV. Okay. There you go. And we change this up. And we see, we make it run. Now, the oscillator which sets the rate at which the sequencer works is the sampling rate setting, which, as we've said, every 8 steps would generate a wave controlled by the levels placed in here. If we increase the sampling rate, we increase the frequency of the output. And as you can hear, we have quite a range. Okay, just quiet it down a bit because volume control, now there is no volume control except from here, or as for further processing in there. That effect is changed. I have just changed its frequency. The levels of voltages, I have left them the same, but now I am going to keep the frequency the same, but I'm going to change the voltage levels, the individual voltage levels of each bit, to demonstrate the change, the subtle change in tonality of the signal coming out of the oscillator in wavetable mode. So, if we go. I would like to say here that the sound that you were hearing prior to starting the demonstration, that was a 32-bit sound. This one is much cruder. It is only 8-bit of resolution, which is, as I'm sure all those who can appreciate bit crush, the way bit crush destroys the signal, this is basically comes already destroyed. So basically that's how it is. Right, CV mode. Okay, I will now run it and in random mode. And here what we have is when before we had an ordered reading from memory location from channel 1 to channel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now it will access these in a random fashion so that the settings would no longer be applicable, as I was demonstrating here, that instead of we having just a simple square wave, we can have a lot of voltages coming in and out, which would be translated into a much more complex and hopefully more interesting sonic wave. Now we switch over to random. And as always, when I'm alone at home, I would find these sweet spots almost immediately, but during a demonstration, they are elusive. However, you get the idea. Believe me, once you get into the groove with this unit, there is a lot of depth into it. And here we are only talking about it as a single unit. We keep that in mind. Apart from being used as a single unit, as I have stated before, we have decided to make it compatible with eurorack, and it actually fits in a eurorack. I have the similar thing here installed in a eurorack, and basically all you need to install it in here is you just remove. By the way, this works from a 9-volt battery, which isn't that much of a problem to have. And if we look, all we have to do is remove the battery, take out this protective piece of foam, and voila, we have a eurorack connector so that it can run from a eurorack power supply. Now we put this by this side, and we turn over to here. Okay. You may be wondering, what were these 3 lights up here doing? That is a clock divider. What is a clock divider? Basically, a clock divider is, as the name implies, it takes a clock input, which is a train of pulses, as I'm sure everybody knows, and it divides it by 2 to get half the frequency of the incoming clock, and divides that by 2 further to get another division, which would be the original clock divided by 4. Now here I have bridged the divide between mentioning clock and in electronic terms and the time notation in music. As you can see here, if we consider a clock input as being quavers, we can consider the half frequency as being crotchets and the divide by 4 as being minims. Okay? So you can consider this, that if you have something going on and you really would like to synchronize everything, you have those 3 separate but synchronized time divisions by which you can tie everything and make everything happen when they are required and not on a random fashion. It is important to note that the clock divider here, which outputs this, does not follow the random rule when the unit is running in random. It's a bit, okay. When you run the unit in random, the clock divider remains in linear mode. Now, why do we put a clock divider into Storbju? Because by doing so, we can trigger other voices or envelope generators or other sequencers also. I can actually use the divider to run a second unit at the same speed, at half the speed, or at 1/4 of the speed, so that we can further expand our soundscape. Now, here, to keep everything simple, I have decided to trigger drum voices, which are here, okay? And when the divider is running, we have the clock frequency coming in, which is the hi-hat, we have half the frequency as the bass drum and the quarter frequency as a snare. Eventually. When we mix them all together, we get something like this. Okay, that sounds like a funeral march, so we pick it up a bit. I need to point out here, just a reminder, that the voicing is not in Storbju. Storbju is just providing the triggering of the voices, which are supplied separately. Okay. Now, so far, we have used the sequencer as a drone within itself when the unit was being used as an individual standalone unit. However, when we change it over to use for eurorack, we are able to take a varying control voltage from each separate channel so that we control in the same method that we are controlling external voices, we can control an external voltage controlled oscillator, which is what we have over here, so that we can generate a sound from external oscillators. This particular oscillator has 3 outputs, which are a ramp, a square wave, and a sine wave. And we can see, let's put this down a bit, and stop this one, and we can hear them, hopefully. The change in tonality is the external oscillator, not the Storbju. Now, this is I am manually adjusting one channel just to see. What I'm doing is I am changing the control voltage coming out of Storbju and going into the VCO, which, when we run the sequencer, interesting. Okay, there you go. As you can see, it has now become the actual Terramaxka because it can provide percussion and the voice over here. Okay. One other thing that we have included in the Terramaxka is, apart from it controlling eurorack, we can sort of make eurorack control Storbju. And the way to do it is by providing it with an external clock input. Okay, how does this work? So far, we have used the internal clock provided in the unit, but now we are going to plug in an LFO, which is a low-frequency oscillator, which will supply us with the external clock input, and we can run Terramaxka at the speed which we set by adjusting the LFO rather than the internal oscillator. As you can see, the progression rate is being set by the LFO. Okay, so what is the big deal with controlling it from outside? Well, that is part of the creativity capability of the unit, because while the internal oscillator is only adjustable by manually, the external one can be anything. It can vary into frequency by itself. You can have another LFO controlling the clock LFO, so you can have varying frequencies or effects or soundscapes available to you. And right, basically that is the unit. However, if we have still time, do we have still time? Right, okay. There is another mode which I would like to demonstrate so that we can see further use and the capability of what it can do for us here. Now, we have 3 clock divider channels. That means that we have only the clock frequency, half its frequency, and a quarter of its frequency, as I have demonstrated on the graph which we have here. However, there is a hidden fourth channel here, which works by setting all the sequencer outputs to 0, and we emulate, rather than a control voltage, we emulate a trigger pulse. Now, what I have done here is I have the 4th drum voice, and I will be triggering it from the same output by which I was controlling the external VCO by feeding it a control voltage. As I have said before, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate rather a trigger pulse rather than a control voltage. And the way to do that is that I would remove all voltages from the 8 steps and only bring up one of them, which would be the pulse that would trigger the 4th voice, which is a clap. So I will remove the CV connection from the VCO and plug in the trigger CV. This is supposed to be a clap. What I'm doing here is I'm readjusting the voice because I was demonstrating something beforehand, the demonstration, and I forgot to bring it back. Now, as you notice here, there is a clap on channel 1. If we want to bring up any number of claps, as long as they are alternate, we can do by simply turning up the CV of the channel we want it to be. So if we have one on here on 1 and on 3, as we can see, we have a trigger on 1 and a trigger on 4. If we want to change the time where the clap sound is triggered into this whole sequence, we can change them from 1 and 4, for example, to 2 and 5, or 6. And when we go as you can see, and as you can see, you can change the place of the 4th trigger in relation to the whole sequence. And basically, that's it. I hope that I have been clear about its technical capabilities. Now it is up to the you inventive people to come up with the ideas on how to use it and produce some nice music, or at least what I'll do, noise. Thank you. Thank you.